A single dad found a woman's phone at the park, but the last text was so terrifying it made him call the police, and what he uncovered next will test how far a father's love can go. What secret was she running from? And will he risk everything to save a stranger's child? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the playground as Daniel Miller watched his daughter Lily skip toward the swings. Her pigtails bounced with each step, reminding him so much of Sarah, his late wife. Even after 3 years, these quiet moments still brought a familiar ache to his chest. The park was peaceful this early, with only a few other families scattered around. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and morning dew. Daniel settled onto a weathered wooden bench, his hands wrapped around a warm coffee cup as his thoughts drifted to happier times. "Higher, Daddy! Watch me go higher!" Lily called out, her legs pumping furiously on the swing. Daniel smiled and waved, marveling at how she'd grown. 7 years old now. But sometimes she seemed so much older, especially in the way she'd learned to read his moods and offer comfort when memories of Sarah weighed heavily on him. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and Daniel's attention was drawn to something on the bench next to his. A smartphone lay there, its screen occasionally lighting up with incoming notifications. He glanced around, searching for its owner, but no one seemed to be coming back for it. "Should turn that in," he muttered to himself, reaching over to pick up the phone. Just as his fingers closed around it, the screen lit up with a new message. Daniel didn't mean to read it, but the words jumped out at him before he could look away. "If I don't make it home, tell my son I love him." The coffee cup slipped from his other hand, spilling across the concrete. His heart began to pound as he reread the message, trying to convince himself he'd misunderstood. But there it was, clear as day. A message that spoke of desperate fear and maternal love. "Daddy?" Lily's voice cut through his racing thoughts. She had stopped swinging and now stood before him, her face pinched with concern. "Why do you look so pale? Are you okay?" Daniel tried to smile to reassure her, but his lips wouldn't quite cooperate. "I'm fine, sweetie," he managed, though his voice sounded strange even to his own ears. Just give Daddy a minute, okay?" Lily's small hand reached out to touch his arm. "You look scared," she said softly. "Like that time we saw the car accident on Main Street." Trust his daughter to see right through him. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The phone felt heavy in his hand, like it carried the weight of its owner's fear. He needed to act, to do something, but his mind kept circling back to that message. Someone's child was waiting for their mother to come home. "Is that somebody's phone?" Lily asked, peering at the device in his hand. "Maybe they forgot it?" "Yeah, honey," Daniel replied, his throat tight. "But I think maybe they need help." He pulled out his own phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he did so. The right thing to do was clear, but something about this situation sent chills down his spine. Lily moved closer, pressing against his side in that intuitive way children have of offering comfort. "Are you calling the police? Like you taught me to do if I'm ever scared?" Daniel nodded, wrapping one arm around her shoulders. "That's right, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups need help too." He dialed 911, his fingers shaking as he pressed each number. The phone felt slick in his sweaty palm as he waited for someone to answer. Lily tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wide with concern. "Daddy, you're shaking," she whispered. And then, in a moment of wisdom beyond her years, added, "But it's okay to be scared when you're helping someone." The phone continued to ring as Daniel held his daughter close, that haunting message burning in his mind. Somewhere out there, a mother was afraid she wouldn't make it home to her son. The thought made him hold Lily just a little tighter as he waited for the call to connect. At his side, the found phone lit up again with another notification, but Daniel couldn't bring himself to look at it. Instead, he focused on the weight of Lily against him, the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze, and the steady ring of the phone in his hand as he waited for someone to answer his call for help. Daniel sat on the park bench, his arm wrapped protectively around Lily's shoulders as they waited for the police to arrive. His daughter's small hand clutched his jacket, her usual boundless energy temporarily subdued by her father's obvious concern. "Is the phone's owner going to be okay?" Lily whispered, her bright eyes searching his face. "I hope so, sweetheart. That's why we called the police. They'll know what to do." Daniel gave her a reassuring squeeze, though his own heart still raced from reading that haunting message. The morning had grown warmer, and more families had begun filtering into the park. Children laughed on the playground equipment, while parents chatted nearby, completely unaware of the drama unfolding on their quiet bench. Daniel kept the phone safely in his lap, occasionally glancing at its dark screen. After what felt like hours but was probably only 15 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. 2 officers stepped out, a tall man with graying temples and a younger woman with kind eyes and auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Mr. Miller?" The female officer approached first, her badge catching the sunlight. "I'm Officer Karen Johnson, and this is Officer Peters. We received your call about a found phone with a concerning message." Daniel stood, carefully holding out the device. "Yes, I found it right here on this bench." There was a text notification. His voice trailed off, conscious of Lily listening intently beside him. Officer Johnson took the phone gently, her professional demeanor somehow reassuring. "You did exactly the right thing by calling us, sir." She examined the phone briefly before slipping it into an evidence bag. "We'll investigate this thoroughly." "The message seemed really worried," Daniel explained, choosing his words carefully with Lily present. "Like someone might be in trouble." Officer Peters nodded, pulling out a notepad. "Can you tell us exactly when and where you found the phone? Any other details you noticed?" Daniel described the morning's events, while Lily watched the officers with wide-eyed fascination. The police officer's calm, methodical approach helped settle his initial panic. They asked clear, professional questions and took detailed notes. "Look how shiny their badges are, Daddy," Lily whispered loudly, making Officer Johnson smile. "Would you like to see it up close?" Officer Johnson knelt to Lily's level, tilting her badge so the little girl could examine it better. The simple gesture seemed to break some of the tension in the air. "That's so cool," Lily beamed. "My daddy's like a police helper today, right? He found something important." Officer Johnson nodded seriously. "Your daddy did a very good thing. He's helping us protect people, which is what police officers do every day." "Daddy saved the day." Lily clapped her hands, bouncing on her toes with restored energy. Daniel managed a faint smile, touched by his daughter's pride but still troubled by the situation. "I just hope whoever owns the phone is okay." "We'll do everything we can to look into this," Officer Johnson assured him, standing back up. "You've given us a good start by reporting it so quickly. We'll run the phone's information and see what we can find out." After taking down Daniel's contact information, the officers prepared to leave. "We'll be in touch if we need any additional information," Officer Peters said, closing his notepad. "Thank you for being such responsible citizens," Officer Johnson added, giving Lily a warm smile. "Both of you." Daniel watched the police cruiser pull away, feeling somewhat lighter. The officer's professional handling of the situation had helped calm his initial fears. Maybe he had overreacted to the message. Maybe there was a simple explanation. "Can we go back to the swings now, Daddy?" Lily tugged at his hand, already moving toward the playground. "Actually, sweetheart, I think it's time we headed home for lunch." Daniel checked his watch, surprised to see how much time had passed. "How about grilled cheese sandwiches? With tomato soup?" Lily's face lit up at the suggestion of her favorite meal, of course. Daniel gathered their belongings, helping Lily with her light jacket as the afternoon sun had warmed the air considerably. During the drive home, Lily chattered about the police officers' badges and how she might want to be a police officer when she grew up, or maybe a firefighter, or possibly a veterinarian. Daniel responded with appropriate enthusiasm, but his mind kept drifting back to that message on the phone. "If I don't make it home, tell my son, I love him." The words seemed to echo in his thoughts, refusing to fade away. As a father himself, he couldn't imagine the fear and desperation that would drive someone to send such a message. He gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, trying to focus on Lily's animated conversation instead of the gnawing worry in his gut. Traffic moved slowly through their suburban streets, and Daniel found himself studying the faces of passing pedestrians, wondering if any of them might know something about the phone's owner. He shook his head slightly, attempting to clear away such thoughts. The police were handling it now. He'd done what he could. "Daddy, you're being quiet," Lily observed suddenly, pulling him from his reverie. "Just thinking about those grilled cheese sandwiches," he fibbed, forcing a lighter tone. "Should we use the yellow cheese or the white cheese?" "Both?" Lily declared decisively. "That's how Mommy used to make them." Daniel's heart squeezed at the mention of Sarah, but he smiled. "Both it is then. Your mom always knew best when it came to grilled cheese." As they turned onto their street, Daniel tried to convince himself that he'd done all he could. The phone was in good hands with the police, and whatever was happening, the authorities would handle it. Still, as he pulled into their driveway, those words kept floating back to him. "If I don't make it home." The kitchen filled with the comforting aroma of garlic and tomato sauce as Daniel stirred the pot of spaghetti. Steam rose in gentle swirls, fogging the window above the sink where the last rays of sunlight filtered through. He'd always found cooking therapeutic, but tonight his movements were mechanical, his mind elsewhere. And then Jenny said her hamster did a backflip. Lily giggled from her perch at the kitchen counter, swinging her legs as she colored in her notebook. "I told her hamsters can't do backflips, but she wouldn't listen." "Mm-hmm," Daniel murmured, barely registering his daughter's words. The message from the phone kept flashing in his mind. "If I don't make it home, tell my son I love him." He gave the sauce another absent-minded stir. "Daddy, you're not listening," Lily pouted, putting down her crayon. "The sauce is bubbling too much." Daniel snapped back to attention, quickly turning down the heat. "Sorry, sweetie. You're right. Both about me not listening and the sauce." He forced a smile. "Now what were you saying about Jenny's athletic hamster?" Lily launched back into her story as Daniel pulled out 2 plates, but his thoughts continued to drift. He wondered if the police had made any progress. Had they found the phone's owner? Was she safe? He thought about her son, waiting somewhere for his mother to come home. "Can I have extra cheese?" Lily asked, breaking through his thoughts again. Of course. Daniel sprinkled a generous helping of Parmesan over her plate, then carried their meals to the small kitchen table. The garlic bread was perfectly toasted, golden brown, and fragrant. It was their favorite dinner, a Friday night tradition that started after her mother passed. Simple comfort food that somehow made the world feel a little more normal. "Daddy, you're doing it again," Lily said around a mouthful of spaghetti. "You keep getting that worried look, like when I had that really bad cold last winter." Daniel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I guess I'm just thinking too much about what happened at the park today." "The police will help that person, right?" Lily twirled her fork in the spaghetti, creating a neat nest. "That's what they do, like when they helped Mr. Peterson find his lost dog." "You're right," Daniel agreed, trying to match her certainty. "They're very good at helping people." They finished dinner, and Daniel went through their evening routine on autopilot. He helped Lily brush her teeth, making sure she didn't rush through it like she sometimes did. Her pink toothbrush matched her butterfly pajamas, a detail that usually made him smile but tonight barely registered. "Can you read me 2 stories?" Lily asked as she climbed into bed, her stuffed giraffe tucked under one arm. "Just one tonight, sweetie." Daniel sat on the edge of her bed, picking up her current favorite book about a brave little mouse. The familiar words should have been soothing, but he kept losing his place, his mind wandering to darker places. Halfway through the story, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He almost ignored it, but something made him pull it out and check the screen. The number was local but unfamiliar. "Hold on a second, Lily," he said, his throat suddenly dry. "I need to take this call." He stepped into the hallway, leaving Lily's door cracked open. "Hello, Mr. Miller?" a female voice asked. "This is Officer Karen Johnson from the police department. We spoke earlier today at the park about the phone you found." Daniel's free hand pressed against the wall, steadying himself. "Yes, I remember. We've identified the owner," Officer Johnson continued, her tone professional but gentle. "The phone belongs to Maria Lopez. She hasn't been seen since leaving her shift at work last night." The hallway seemed to tilt slightly. Daniel glanced back at Lily's room, where he could hear her humming quietly to herself, probably showing her giraffe the book illustrations. "Her son," he managed to say. The message mentioned her son. Yes, Officer Johnson confirmed. Tommy. He's 7 years old, currently staying with a neighbor who sometimes watches him while Miss Prude. Lopez works. 7. The same age as Lily. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering how it felt when Lily's mother first got sick, the creeping dread of knowing their daughter might grow up without her mom. What can I tell you about the phone? About the message? Actually, Mr. Miller, that's partly why I'm calling. The message you saw might be our only clue about what happened to Miss Lopez. Would you be willing to come down to the station tomorrow morning to give a formal statement? Any details you remember could be important. Of course, Daniel said immediately. First thing tomorrow. Daddy? Lily's voice called from her room. Are you coming back to finish the story? Just a moment, sweetheart, he called back, his voice remarkably steady despite the tremor in his hands. Thank you, Mr. Miller, Officer Johnson said. We'll see you tomorrow at 9? I'll be there, Daniel promised. He ended the call and stood in the hallway for a moment, trying to compose himself before returning to Lily's room. His daughter was waiting, innocent and safe, in her bed, while somewhere in town, another child was wondering why his mother hadn't come home. Who was on the phone? Lily asked as he sat back down on her bed. Just someone who needs some help, Daniel said softly, picking up the book again. He tried to focus on the words on the page, but they blurred slightly. Maria Lopez. Tommy. A 7-year-old boy, waiting for his mother. Is it about the phone from the park? Lily's perception sometimes startled him. Yes, it Island. Daniel didn't believe in lying to his daughter, even to protect her. But don't worry about it right now. Let's finish your story. Lily snuggled deeper under her covers, but her eyes stayed fixed on his face. You look scared, Daddy. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He'd seen that same concerned look on her face when her mother was sick, a child trying to be brave for her parent. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Sometimes grown-ups get worried, he explained carefully. But that's okay. It means we care about helping others. Lily nodded solemnly, accepting this explanation with the simple wisdom of childhood. She pointed to the book, waiting for him to continue reading, but Daniel's mind was already racing ahead to tomorrow morning, to the police station, to a little boy named Tommy who was waiting for his mother to come home. The living room lamp cast long shadows across Daniel's face as he pressed the phone tighter against his ear. His fingers trembled slightly as Officer Karen Johnson's voice carried through the speaker, each word making his chest tighten a little more. Mr. Miller, the phone belongs to Maria Lopez, Officer Johnson explained, her tone professional but gentle. She's a single mother who works at the Riverside Shopping Center. According to her employer, she left her shift last night around 9, but never made it home. Daniel sank deeper into his worn leather armchair, the same one where he used to read bedtime stories to Lily when she was smaller. Her son, is he okay? He's with their next-door neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, Officer Johnson replied. She's been watching him since last night when Maria didn't come home. The boy is 7, about your daughter's age. 7 years old, just like Lily. Daniel's throat felt dry as he glanced toward the hallway where his own child slept peacefully. The thought of a child waiting for their parent to come home hit too close to home. There's something else you should know, Officer Johnson continued, her voice dropping slightly. This case, it's complicated. Maria had recently filed some complaints at work. We're looking into everything, but she paused, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes these situations aren't as straightforward as they seem. Daniel leaned forward, running a hand through his graying hair. What do you mean by complicated? I probably shouldn't say too much, but... Officer Johnson sighed. Maria had been having some trouble at work. Reported harassment, discrimination, the kind of things that sometimes get swept under the rug. The words settled heavily in Daniel's stomach. He thought of the text message he'd found on the phone. If I don't make it home, tell my son I love him. It wasn't just a message anymore. It was a mother's fear, a parent's desperate love for their child. Is there anything I can do? Daniel asked, surprising himself with the question. You've already done more than most would, Mr. Miller. Turning in the phone gives us a timeline, something to work with. We'll handle it from here." But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. He stood up, pacing the living room floor, his sock-covered feet silent on the carpet. The house felt especially quiet tonight, with only the soft hum of the heating system and the distant ticking of the kitchen clock. "Her son," Daniel said suddenly. "Does he have anyone else? Family?" "From what we understand, it's just Maria and Tommy. Her parents are in Mexico, and there's no father in the picture." Officer Johnson's voice softened. "Look, Mr. Miller, I know what you're thinking, but please leave this to us. We're doing everything we can." Daniel stopped in front of the fireplace, his eyes drawn to the silver-framed photograph on the mantel. Sarah's smile beamed back at him, frozen in time at their last Christmas together. Her eyes sparkled with the same kindness that had made him fall in love with her, the same warmth she'd shown to everyone she met. "Mr. Miller?" Officer Johnson's voice brought him back to the present. "Are you still there?" "Yes," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I'm here. Try to get some rest. We'll contact you if we need any additional information about finding the phone." After exchanging goodbyes, Daniel stood motionless, the phone still in his hand. The silence of the house seemed to press in around him, broken only by the soft creaking of settling wood and distant traffic outside. He stepped closer to the mantel, picking up Sarah's photograph. His thumb traced the edge of the frame, remembering how she'd always been the first to help others in need. When their elderly neighbor had broken her hip, Sarah had organized meal deliveries. When a new family moved in down the street, she'd been there with welcome cookies and offers of babysitting. "What would you want me to do?" he whispered to the photograph, his voice catching slightly. The image of Sarah smiled back, offering no answers but reminding him of everything she'd stood for. Kindness, courage, doing the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. The words of Maria's text message played again in his mind, mixing with thoughts of her son, Tommy, waiting at a neighbor's house, probably watching the door, hoping his mother would walk through it at any moment. It was a scene too familiar, too raw. He remembered Lily in those first few months after Sarah's death, the way she'd sit by the window, waiting for a mother who would never come home. Daniel carefully set the photograph back on the mantel, his fingers lingering on the frame. The house creaked again, and somewhere down the hall he heard Lily turn over in her sleep. He stood there in the dim light, caught between the memory of his wife and the reality of a mother missing, a child waiting, and a mystery that seemed to call to him with Sarah's voice. The gentle ticking of the clock marked the passing minutes as Daniel remained rooted in place, looking at Sarah's photograph. Sometimes, in moments like these, he could almost hear her voice, could almost feel what she would say. The weight of responsibility settled over his shoulders, not just to his own daughter, but to a little boy he'd never met and his missing mother. Behind him the phone sat silent on the arm of his chair, but the evening's conversation echoed in his thoughts. Officer Johnson's words about complications, about things being swept under the rug, mixed with the desperate text message he'd found. What had Maria been afraid of? What had she faced alone? The darkness outside the windows seemed deeper now, and Daniel couldn't help but wonder where Maria was at this moment. Was she safe? Was she thinking of her son? The questions tumbled through his mind, refusing to let go. He turned back to Sarah's photograph one last time, her familiar smile both comfort and challenge. "I know," he whispered. "I know what you'd say." But knowing and deciding what to do about it were two very different things. And in the quiet of his living room, Daniel stood suspended between them, Sarah's memory lighting the way forward like a beacon in the dark. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the windshield as Daniel guided his car through the quiet streets. Lily sat in the back, humming softly to herself while flipping through her math workbook. Her purple backpack rested beside her, covered in the butterfly stickers she'd carefully arranged last weekend. "Remember to turn in your permission slip for the field trip," Daniel reminded her, catching her eye in the rearview mirror. "I put it right in the front pocket, Daddy. Triple-checked." Lily's smile brightened the car, but Daniel couldn't fully return it. His mind kept drifting back to Officer Johnson's words from the night before. After dropping Lily off at school, watching her skip up the steps with her best friend Emma, Daniel found himself taking an unplanned turn. The GPS on his dashboard led him through unfamiliar neighborhoods until he reached Maple Grove Apartments, a modest 3-story building with faded red bricks and window boxes full of geraniums. Daniel parked his truck and sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel. The building looked warm and lived in, with children's bikes chained to a rack and welcome mats dotting the front entrance. A place where ordinary families made their homes. A place where a mother should be returning to her son. As he stepped out of his vehicle, an elderly woman watering the flowers looked up, her face crinkled with recognition. "Oh, you're the one who found Maria's phone, aren't you?" She set down her watering can, wiping her hands on her floral apron. "I'm Mrs. Chen. I've been looking after Tommy since." Her voice trailed off, heavy with worry. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Daniel Miller." He extended his hand, which she clasped warmly between both of hers. "I just wanted to check. I was wondering how her son was doing." Mrs. Chen's eyes softened. "Would you like to meet him? Poor thing's barely spoken since yesterday. Maybe." She paused, studying Daniel's face. "Maybe seeing someone who's trying to help find his mama might lift his spirits?" Daniel nodded, following Mrs. Chen up 2 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled of fresh bread and lemon cleaning solution. She unlocked apartment 2C, calling out gently, "Tommy, there's someone here who'd like to meet you." The apartment was small but tidy, with homework papers spread across the coffee table and a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the kitchen counter. A small boy sat cross-legged on the couch, clutching a well-worn stuffed elephant. He looked up at Daniel with large brown eyes, so full of hope it made Daniel's heart ache. "Hi there, Tommy," Daniel said softly, kneeling down to the boy's eye level. "I'm Daniel. I found your mom's phone yesterday." Tommy's grip on the elephant loosened slightly. He studied Daniel's face with an intensity that seemed beyond his years. Then, without warning, he slid off the couch and threw his arms around Daniel's neck, pressing his face into Daniel's shoulder. "Mommy says you're my daddy," Tommy whispered, his voice muffled and trembling. Daniel froze, his arms automatically cradling the small body that shook with silent tears. Mrs. Chen gasped softly from somewhere behind them. The weight of Tommy's trust, his desperate need for comfort, felt both familiar and heartbreaking. Daniel started, but Tommy's grip tightened. "She showed me your picture," Tommy continued in that same whisper, "said you looked just like him." Daniel gently rubbed Tommy's back, the way he did when Lily had nightmares. His mind raced with the implications of Tommy's words, but right now, this child needed stability more than clarity. "It's okay, buddy," he murmured. "It's okay to be scared. We're going to find your mom." Tommy slowly pulled back, wiping his nose with his sleeve. His eyes were red-rimmed, but clearer now. "Promise?" "I promise we won't give up," Daniel answered carefully, reaching for the box of tissues on the coffee table and offering one to Tommy. Mrs. Chen moved into the kitchen, her shoes clicking against the linoleum. "Tommy, would you like some hot chocolate, the kind with extra marshmallows?" The boy nodded, finally releasing his hold on Daniel. As Tommy followed Mrs. Chen, Daniel stood up, his knees cracking slightly. He noticed a framed photo on the bookshelf. Maria Lopez, with her arms around Tommy at what looked like a school event. Her smile was warm and genuine, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked nothing like the type of person who would simply disappear. "He's been so quiet since yesterday, Mrs. Chen said softly, measuring cocoa powder into a mug. "This is the most I've seen him respond to anyone." She glanced meaningfully at Daniel. "You must remind him of someone important." Daniel watched Tommy carefully stir his hot chocolate, counting the marshmallows under his breath. The boy's simple trust, his desperate grasp at any connection to his missing mother, stirred something deep in Daniel's chest. Memories of holding Lily through those first terrible nights after her mother died. "I should get going," Daniel said finally, checking his watch. "But I'd like to check in on Tommy again if that's all right." Mrs. Chen nodded eagerly. Of course. Here's my number." She scribbled it on a notepad shaped like a cat. "Tommy needs all the support he can get right now." "Bye, Tommy," Daniel called softly. The boy looked up from his hot chocolate, those same hope-filled eyes meeting Daniel's. I'll come see you again soon, okay? Tommy nodded, a tiny marshmallow mustache on his upper lip. Promise? I promise. The walk back to his car felt longer than it should have. Daniel's emotions tumbled over each other. Concern for the missing Maria, worry for Tommy, confusion about being mistaken for someone from their past, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility that he couldn't quite shake. As he slid behind the wheel, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror and wondered what Maria had seen in his face that reminded her so much of Tommy's father. The morning sun had climbed higher now, burning away the last wisps of fog from the streets. Daniel sat there, key in the ignition, while the weight of Tommy's hug still lingered on his shoulders. Daniel stared at the plate of baked chicken and vegetables, pushing a piece of broccoli around with his fork. The kitchen's warm yellow light couldn't quite chase away the heaviness that had settled over him since meeting Tommy that morning. Across the table, Lily took careful bites of her dinner, her blue eyes fixed on her father's troubled expression. "Daddy?" Her small voice broke through his thoughts. "Is Tommy going to be okay?" Daniel set down his fork, considering how to answer. The weight of Tommy's mistaken words, "Mommy says you're my daddy," still echoed in his mind. He drew a deep breath and managed a gentle smile for his daughter. "I hope so, sweetheart. Tommy's just really missing his mom right now." Lily nodded, her face serious. "Like how I miss Mom sometimes?" "Yeah, kind of like that." Daniel's throat tightened. "But Tommy's mom will come back. The police are looking for her." "Did you know Tommy is in first grade too?" Lily perked up. "Maybe he could come to my school." "How do you know that?" "The neighbor lady told me when you were talking to Tommy." Lily took a sip of her milk, leaving a white mustache that she wiped away with her sleeve. "He looks sad, Daddy. Mom always said sad people need extra love." Daniel's chest ached at the mention of his late wife. Sarah had been that way, always ready with a meal for a sick neighbor or a kind word for someone having a rough day. He could almost hear her voice. "Sometimes, people just need to know they're not alone." "You're right, honey. Your mom was good at helping people." "Then we should help Tommy and his mom." Lily's eyes lit up with determination. "Mom would want us to. Remember when she made soup for Mr. Jenkins next door when he broke his leg?" Daniel smiled at the memory. Sarah had made enough soup to feed an army, insisting on delivering a fresh batch every other day until their elderly neighbor could walk again. "She did love taking care of people," Daniel agreed softly. "And now we can take care of Tommy." Lily pushed her empty plate away. "Please, Daddy, he needs friends right now." Looking at his daughter's hopeful face, Daniel felt something shift inside him. The hesitation that had plagued him all day began to melt away. Lily was right. Sarah would have jumped in to help without a second thought. Maybe this was more than just finding a phone in the park. Maybe this was about being the kind of person he wanted his daughter to become. "You know what?" Daniel reached across the table and squeezed Lily's hand. "You sound just like your mom right now. And you're absolutely right." Lily beamed, pride shining in her eyes. "Can we visit Tommy tomorrow?" "We'll see, sweetie. First, I need to talk to the police officer again. Find out if there's anything else we can do to help." After clearing the dishes Lily insisted on drying, while Daniel washed, he tucked her into bed. Her room was a cozy space filled with stuffed animals and drawings taped to the walls. As he pulled her butterfly-patterned comforter up to her chin, she grabbed his hand. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart? Mom would be proud of us for helping, right?" Daniel felt tears prick at his eyes. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Yes, honey. She'd be very proud of you." Once Lily was asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his phone. Officer Johnson's card lay before him, the edges already slightly worn from being carried in his pocket all day. The kitchen clock ticked steadily as he gathered his courage. Finally, he picked up his phone and dialed the number. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Officer Johnson speaking. This is Daniel Miller, the one who found the phone in the park?" "Yes, Mr. Miller. I remember." Her voice warmed slightly. "What can I do for you?" Daniel gripped the phone tighter. "I met Tommy today, Maria's son. I want to help. There must be something more I can do besides just finding a phone." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Officer Johnson spoke again, her voice was careful but kind. "Mr. Miller, you've already done more than most people would." But if you're serious about helping, she hesitated. Maybe we should meet tomorrow to discuss this further. The morning sun cast long shadows across the police station's brick facade as Daniel pulled into the visitor parking lot. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly before he finally turned off the engine. The station looked smaller than he'd imagined, just a plain, two-story building with worn steps leading to glass double doors. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead while a desk sergeant directed him to wait on one of the hard plastic chairs lining the wall. The place smelled of coffee and paper, with phones ringing in the background, and officers moving purposefully through the halls. Daniel's leg bounced nervously as he waited, his mind drifting to Lily's goodbye wave at school drop-off just 30 minutes ago. "Mr. Miller?" Officer Karen Johnson appeared from around a corner, her familiar face from yesterday bringing immediate relief. She wore her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her uniform crisp despite the early hour. "Thanks for coming in. Follow me." They walked down a narrow hallway to a small office, cluttered with filing cabinets and manila folders. A desk fan whirred quietly in the corner, stirring papers held down by coffee mugs and paperweights. "I appreciate you taking the time," Daniel said, settling into a chair across from her desk. "I know you're busy, but I can't stop thinking about Maria and Tommy." Officer Johnson nodded, pulling out a thick file. "I understand. I've been reviewing Maria's case since you found her phone." She paused, studying Daniel's face. "What made you come in today?" "Tommy," Daniel said quietly. "The way he looked at me yesterday. I've seen that look before in Lily's eyes after her mother passed. That mix of hope and fear." He swallowed hard. "I need to know what's being done." Officer Johnson's expression softened. She opened the file, spreading out several documents. "Maria Lopez, age 32. Single mother. Worked at Riverside Manufacturing for the past 3 years as a quality control inspector." Daniel leaned forward, noticing the officer's slight correction. Worked? She'd been having troubles there. Officer Johnson's mouth tightened. "Filed 3 separate complaints with HR in the past 2 months. Harassment, discrimination, unsafe working conditions, but the company's got good lawyers, and things moved slowly." She pulled out a statement form covered in neat handwriting. Her last complaint was filed just 4 days ago. She reported her supervisor, James Morton, for making threatening comments after she documented safety violations on the production line. Daniel's stomach churned. Threatening how? Subtle stuff. Nothing directly violent, but suggestions about her job security, comments about how accidents can happen on the factory floor. Officer Johnson's voice carried controlled anger, the kind of threats that are hard to prove, but impossible to ignore. She shuffled through more papers, showing Daniel a photo of a stern-looking man in his 50s, James Morton, according to the label. "We've interviewed him, of course. Claims he hasn't seen Maria since her shift ended Wednesday night. Says she was emotional, making accusations, causing problems." "And you believe him?" Daniel asked, studying the man's cold eyes in the photograph. Officer Johnson sighed, leaning back in her chair. "What I believe and what I can prove are 2 different things. We're checking security cameras, interviewing other workers, but..." She gestured at the stacks of files around her. "We're understaffed, and cases pile up." Daniel noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the empty coffee cups on her desk. "How many other cases are you handling?" "Too many," she admitted. "Missing persons, domestic disputes, robberies. Each one deserves full attention, but there are only so many hours in the day." She pulled out a map marked with highlighted routes. "We know Maria left work at 11:45 p.m. Wednesday. Security footage shows her walking to the employee parking lot. Her car's still there. That's where we found it yesterday morning after you turned in the phone." Daniel remembered Tommy's small face, his desperate hug. "What about her son? Has anyone talked to him?" "He's scared, confused. Says his mom texted him goodnight like usual, then that final message came hours later." Officer Johnson's voice softened. "The neighbor watching him, Mrs. Ramirez. She's been wonderful, but she can't keep him forever." Daniel nodded, thinking of his own daughter. "And the factory? What are they saying officially?" "Standard corporate response. They're cooperating fully. while their legal team reviews everything. Her tone made clear what she thought of that. They've got cameras in the parking lot, but wouldn't you know it, there was a technical problem that night. No footage available. She pushed several papers across the desk. Printouts of Maria's complaints, witness statements, timeline notes. I shouldn't show you these, but sometimes fresh eyes help. You found her phone. Maybe you'll see something we missed. Daniel carefully studied each document, his heart heavy at the pattern of harassment described in Maria's neat handwriting. Small incidents building up over time, schedule changes without notice, equipment accidentally damaged, warnings about speaking Spanish during breaks. The system's supposed to protect people like Maria, Officer Johnson said quietly, but sometimes it moves too slowly, and people fall through the cracks. Daniel stood up, his decision crystallizing. Thank you for sharing this with me. I know you're doing everything you can. Officer Johnson rose too, extending her card. My direct line's on there. If you notice anything, hear anything, call me immediately. Don't try to investigate yourself. These situations can be dangerous. Daniel took the card, tucking it carefully into his wallet. I understand. I just want to help Tommy get his mother back. Walking out into the morning sunshine, Daniel felt the weight of everything he'd learned settling on his shoulders. The factory loomed in the distance, its smokestacks visible above the trees. Somewhere in this city, Maria was missing. Maybe scared, maybe hurt, but definitely in trouble. He thought of Tommy's whispered words. Mommy says you're my daddy. The boy's desperate need for protection, for hope, had awakened something in Daniel. He couldn't walk away, couldn't just wait and hope the system would work it out eventually. As he reached his car, Daniel's jaw set with determination. He wouldn't do anything foolish or dangerous, but he would keep asking questions, keep looking, keep trying to understand what had happened to Maria. Tommy deserved answers, and Daniel was going to help find them. The afternoon sun warmed the playground equipment as Daniel watched Lily and Tommy chase each other around the swings. He'd picked up Tommy after his morning visit to the police station, wanting to give the neighbor a break and hoping to learn more about Maria. Be careful on those monkey bars, Daniel called out, his protective instincts kicking in as Tommy reached for the first rung. Lily, ever the helper, stood close by with her hands ready to catch him if needed. Tommy's initial shyness had melted away in Lily's presence. Her bright smile and gentle encouragement seemed to work magic on the quiet boy. Daniel settled onto a nearby bench, close enough to supervise, but far enough to give them space to play. Mr. Miller? Tommy's soft voice caught Daniel's attention. The boy had abandoned the monkey bars and now stood before him, twisting the hem of his t-shirt between his fingers. Can I sit with you for a minute? Of course, buddy. Daniel patted the space next to him. Getting tired? Tommy shook his head, his dark eyes serious. I miss my mom's stories. Daniel's heart clenched. What kind of stories did she tell you? Bible stories. Tommy's face lit up slightly. Every night before bed. She liked the one about Daniel, in the lion's den best. He glanced up at Daniel. That's your name too? It sure is, Daniel smiled warmly. Did your mom tell you why she liked that story so much? Tommy nodded eagerly. She said Daniel was brave because he trusted God, even when he was scared. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Mom was scared too, before she went away. Daniel fought to keep his expression steady. What do you mean, Tommy? She kept checking the locks at night, and she prayed more. Tommy pulled his knees up to his chest. She thought I was sleeping, but I heard her crying sometimes. Lily had wandered over and sat cross-legged on the ground in front of them. She reached out and patted Tommy's shoe. My dad checks the locks too. He says it's because he wants to keep me safe. Daniel blinked back tears, touched by his daughter's simple wisdom. Tommy seemed to consider this, his small shoulders relaxing slightly. Your mom sounds like a really good mom, Daniel said gently. She loves you very much. Are you going to stay? Tommy asked suddenly, his eyes intense. The neighbor lady says you're helping look for Mom, but... He trailed off, lower lip trembling. Daniel felt the familiar tug between truth and comfort. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep, but he couldn't bear to add to Tommy's uncertainty. I'm going to help as much as I can, he said carefully. And while we're looking for your mom, you can count on me and Lily to be your friends. Would that be okay?" Tommy nodded, a tear sliding down his cheek. Without hesitation, Lily hopped up and grabbed his hand. "Want to go down the big slide with me?" she asked. "Dad says it's the fastest one in the whole park." Tommy wiped his face with his free hand and managed a small smile. "Okay." Daniel watched as the children climbed the playground structure, Lily chattering encouragingly while Tommy followed. Their laughter soon echoed across the park as they took turns sliding down, their earlier serious conversation temporarily forgotten in the simple joy of play. Pulling out his phone, Daniel typed a message to Tommy's neighbor. "Happy to watch Tommy whenever you need a break. He's welcome anytime." He added his phone number and hit send, then tucked the phone away. The warm afternoon light caught the children's faces as they played, Tommy's smile growing more genuine with each passing minute. Daniel noticed how Lily naturally looked out for the younger boy, waiting at the bottom of the slide to make sure he made it down safely, just as she'd seen her father do for her countless times. "Watch this, Mr. Miller," Tommy called out, showing more animation than Daniel had seen yet. He proceeded to go down the slide backwards, giggling as he reached the bottom. "Great job, buddy," Daniel applauded, sharing a knowing look with Lily, who beamed with pride at helping Tommy come out of his shell. They continued playing as the afternoon stretched on, the sound of children's laughter a balm to Daniel's worried heart. Tommy might not have his mother right now, but at least for these precious hours, he could just be a kid having fun at the park. His phone buzzed with the neighbor's grateful reply, but Daniel let it wait. Right now, watching Tommy and Lily race to the top of the slide again, he knew exactly where he needed to be. The clock on Daniel's microwave blinked 11:23 p.m. as he sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by notes and his laptop. Lily had gone to bed hours ago, leaving the house quiet, except for the soft hum of the dishwasher. He rubbed his tired eyes, trying to focus on the scrap of paper where he'd written down the phone number Maria's neighbor had given him. "Just one more call," he whispered to himself, glancing toward the hallway to make sure Lily's door was still closed. His daughter was usually a sound sleeper, but he didn't want to risk waking her. Daniel's fingers hesitated over his phone. It was late, maybe too late to call, but the gnawing feeling in his gut wouldn't let him wait until morning. He punched in the numbers carefully, double-checking each digit against the paper. The phone rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered, cautious and slightly accented. "Hello? Hi, is this Rosa?" Daniel kept his voice low. "I'm sorry to call so late. My name is Daniel Miller. I'm trying to help find Maria Lopez." There was a long pause on the other end. "How do you know Maria?" Daniel explained about finding the phone, meeting Tommy, and his growing concern. "The neighbor said you worked with her, that you might know something about what happened." Rosa's sigh crackled through the speaker. "Yes, I worked with Maria for 2 years. She is my friend." The present tense correction made Daniel's heart ache. "Can you tell me about the last time you saw her?" "She was upset that day," Rosa began, her voice growing stronger. "Maria had been collecting evidence, you know, taking pictures of the unsafe machines, recording the foreman's comments. Some of us were afraid to speak up, but Maria—" She paused. "Maria said someone had to protect the workers." Daniel grabbed a pen, scribbling notes. "What kind of comments? Terrible things. Calling us lazy wetbacks, threatening to call immigration if we complained about the broken safety guards. Maria documented everything. She went to HR twice, but nothing changed. And the day she disappeared? She told me she had proof the manager was falsifying safety reports. Said she was going to confront Mr. Peterson, he's the plant manager, and then go to OSHA if he didn't fix things." Rosa's voice shook slightly. "I begged her to wait, to be careful, but Maria said she couldn't sleep at night knowing someone could get hurt." Daniel's pen stilled. "Did she meet with Peterson?" "She went into his office around 4. I saw her leave maybe 20 minutes later. She looked scared. Really scared. But determined too, you know? Like when you know something's dangerous but you have to do it anyway." Rosa cleared her throat. "That was the last time I saw her." Pushing back from the table, Daniel stood and paced the kitchen. "Did you tell the police all this?" "Of course. But Mr. Peterson said Maria never came to his office that day. He showed security footage of his office door. No, Maria, the police said without evidence. But you saw her, Daniel pressed. With my own eyes. Maria wore her blue sweater, the one with the little flowers her son gave her for Mother's Day. I remember because she said it gave her courage. Daniel wrote down every detail, his handwriting becoming messier as his urgency grew. Rosa, would you be willing to talk to the police again? Maybe with me there? Another pause. I have 3 children, Mr. Miller. This job, it's not much, but I understand, Daniel said softly, thinking of Lily. Thank you for telling me what you know. If you think of anything else. He gave her his number. After hanging up, Daniel turned to his laptop. He'd found Maria's social media profile earlier, but hadn't had time to really look. Now he clicked through photos. Maria at Tommy's birthday party, both of them grinning over a Superman cake. Maria in her garden, proudly holding up a tomato. Maria at what looked like a church picnic, her arm around Rosa. He stopped at a photo from just 2 weeks ago. Maria stood in front of the factory gates, smiling despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. Her comment below read, "Another day, another chance to make things better. God gives us strength to stand up for what's right." Daniel touched the screen gently. The Maria in these photos radiated warmth and determination. She reminded him of his late wife Sarah, the same quiet strength, the same deep love for her child, the same unwavering moral compass. Standing up, Daniel walked to his living room window. The street outside was dark and peaceful, such a contrast to the turmoil he felt inside. How many people drove past Maria's empty apartment each day, not knowing or caring that a brave woman had vanished, trying to protect others? How many times had he himself passed by similar injustices, too busy or too afraid to get involved? He thought of Tommy's trust, of Lily's innocent belief that good people help others, of Rosa's fear for her own children. The weight of it all pressed down on his shoulders, but instead of crushing him, it straightened his spine. Looking back at Maria's photo, her hopeful smile seeming to pierce right through him, Daniel spoke into the quiet room. "I won't let this be the end of her story." The words hung in the air, a promise he knew he couldn't take back. Somewhere out there, Maria Lopez needed help, and Daniel Miller had decided to answer that need, whatever the cost. The humming dishwasher clicked off, leaving the house in complete silence. Daniel gathered his notes, knowing he should try to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new leads to follow, but Maria's smile stayed with him as he turned off the lights, a beacon of courage in the darkness. The Saturday morning sun cast long shadows across Mrs. Rodriguez's porch as Daniel stood with Lily and Tommy, waiting for the elderly neighbor to answer their knock. Tommy bounced on his toes, his small hand wrapped tightly in Daniel's. "She makes the best cookies," Tommy whispered to Lily, who smiled back at him. The door creaked open, and Mrs. Rodriguez's weathered face brightened at the sight of them. Come in," she said, ushering them into her small living room. The space smelled of cinnamon and fresh coffee. Family photos covered every wall, showing generations of smiling faces. "I've been expecting you." The children settled onto a worn floral couch, while Daniel perched on the edge of an armchair. Mrs. Rodriguez disappeared into another room, returning with a leather-bound notebook. "Maria left this with me," she explained, her voice thick with emotion. "The day before. Well, before everything happened. She said if anything went wrong, I should make sure someone knew the truth." She pressed the journal into Daniel's hands. "I've been praying for the right person to give this to." Daniel ran his fingers over the soft leather cover. "Are you sure?" Mrs. Rodriguez nodded firmly. "Maria trusted you with that message on her phone. Now I'm trusting you with this." Tommy leaned forward, recognizing the notebook. "That's Mommy's special book. She wrote in it every night after stories." Daniel opened the journal carefully, aware of 3 pairs of eyes watching him. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, some entries short, others spanning multiple pages. He began reading aloud from a recent entry. "April 15th, Mr. Jenkins called me into his office again today. Said I was causing trouble with my complaints about the safety violations. Told me to remember, I'm lucky to have this job at all." Mrs. Rodriguez clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "That man. Maria told me how he treated the workers, especially those who spoke up." Daniel continued reading, his voice growing tenser with each entry. "April 18th. Found another threatening note in my locker. They think they can scare me into silence, but what kind of example would I be for Tommy if I let fear win?" Tommy pressed closer to Daniel's side. "Mommy was scared? She didn't tell me." "She was trying to protect you, Majo," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly, passing him a cookie from a nearby plate. Lily, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "What else does it say, Daddy?" Daniel flipped through more pages, stopping at an entry that made his breath catch. "April 20, 3rd. Jenkins threatened to have me deported today. I tried explaining I'm a citizen, born right here in California, but he just laughed. Said no one would believe me over him anyway." The room grew still. Even the children seemed to sense the weight of these words. Daniel's hands tightened on the journal as he read more recent entries. "April 25th. The safety inspector is coming tomorrow. Jenkins is having us hide the broken equipment and ordered everyone to lie. I can't do it. Too many people could get hurt. Maria Hernandez already lost 2 fingers last month because of that faulty machine." Mrs. Rodriguez dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Maria was always thinking of others, even when it put her at risk. The final entry was dated the day before Maria disappeared. Daniel's voice wavered slightly as he read, "April 26th. Tomorrow I'm going to the main office with proof of everything. The threats, the covered-up accidents, the fake safety reports. I'm scared, but I can't stay silent anymore. If something happens to me, I hope someone finds this journal. The truth needs to be told. Tommy, mi amor, everything I do is for you." Tommy's eyes filled with tears. "She did it for me?" Daniel set down the journal and pulled the boy into a gentle hug. "Your mom is very brave, Tommy. She wanted to make things better for everyone." Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, her joints creaking. "There's something else." She shuffled to a drawer and pulled out a USB drive. "Maria gave me this too, said it had pictures and documents proving everything." Daniel accepted the small device, tucking it safely into his pocket. His mind was already racing with possibilities, pieces of the puzzle finally coming together. Lily tugged at his sleeve, her face bright with hope. "We can find her now, can't we, Daddy?" Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Tommy, seeing the same desperate hope in both their eyes. The journal had given them their first real clue, a thread to follow. But it had also revealed how dangerous Maria's situation might be. Mrs. Rodriguez placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Maria always said God sends help in unexpected ways. Maybe he sent you, Mr. Miller." The kids were looking at him expectantly, their faces glowing with renewed optimism. Lily's fingers tightened around his arm as she whispered again, "We can find her now, can't we, Daddy?" Looking into their hopeful faces, Daniel felt the weight of their trust, their belief that he could make everything right. The truth in Maria's journal had given them all something they'd been missing, a real chance to find her. The afternoon sun warmed their faces as Daniel guided Tommy and Lily toward the small cafe on Cedar Street. Maria's journal entry had mentioned stopping here the day she disappeared. The cheerful blue awning fluttered in the breeze, and a bell chimed as they pushed open the glass door. "Look, Daddy, they have pictures on their coffee." Lily pointed at a display showing lattes decorated with intricate designs. The cafe smelled of fresh coffee and warm pastries. Tommy's eyes lit up at the display case filled with colorful cookies and muffins. Daniel smiled, remembering how Maria's journal mentioned bringing Tommy here for special treats. "Can we sit at that table?" Tommy asked, pointing to a corner booth by the window. "That's where Mommy always takes me." Daniel's heart squeezed. "Of course, buddy." He led them to the booth, helping both children slide onto the worn leather seats. A waitress with graying hair pulled into a neat bun approached their table, notepad in hand. "What can I get for you folks?" She smiled warmly at the children. Daniel cleared his throat. "Actually, I was hoping to ask you about someone. Maria Lopez? She was here about 5 days ago." The waitress's smile faded slightly. "Maria? Oh yes, sweet girl. Always orders the same thing, chamomile tea and a blueberry scone." She paused, thinking. "Come to think of it, She was acting strange that day. Daniel leaned forward. Strange how? Well, she was sitting right where you are now, working on some papers. Then her phone rang. The waitress, her name tag read Betty, shook her head. The call upset her something fierce. Never seen her like that before. Tommy clutched Daniel's sleeve. What happened to my mom? Betty's eyes softened as she looked at Tommy. She was on that phone for maybe 10 minutes. I could tell she was trying to keep her voice down, but she glanced around and lowered her voice. She kept saying something about evidence, and you can't keep doing this. Lily, who had been quietly coloring on a paper placemat, looked up. Did she look scared like in her journal? Journal? Betty asked. Daniel nodded. We found her journal. She wrote about coming here before heading to confront someone at work. That makes sense, Betty said, adjusting her apron. After the call, she gathered her things in a hurry, left her tea half finished, which wasn't like her at all. She looked determined, but worried too. A middle-aged man at the counter turned around. Are you talking about that young Hispanic woman from last week? Daniel nodded, and the man stood up, walking over to their table. I saw her leaving. She was walking fast, headed toward the industrial district. I remember because she dropped her scarf, and I called out to her, but she didn't hear me. The factory, Daniel murmured. The pieces were starting to fit together. Would you like anything while you're here? Betty asked, her pen hovering over her notepad. Tommy's eyes darted hopefully to the display case. Daniel smiled. 3 hot chocolates, and, he winked at Tommy, 3 of those chocolate chip cookies, please. While they waited for their treats, Daniel pulled out his phone and pulled up a map of the area. The factory was only 6 blocks from the cafe. He marked the route with his finger, showing the children. See? This is where we are. And this is where your mom went next, Tommy. Tommy pressed his small finger to the screen. She's there? Can we go get her? Daniel gently squeezed his shoulder. We're getting closer, buddy. We'll find her. Betty returned with their hot chocolates, topped with whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles, and 3 cookies on colorful plates. The children's faces lit up, and for a moment, they were just kids enjoying a sweet treat. As they finished their cookies, more cafe regulars shared their memories of Maria. She came in 3 times a week, always kind, always had a story about Tommy to share. She'd been quieter lately, they said, more worried. Thank you, Daniel told Betty as they prepared to leave. This helps more than you know. Betty touched Tommy's cheek gently. Your mama's a fighter, sweetheart. One of the strongest people I know. Back in the car, the mood was lighter than it had been in days. Tommy had chocolate on his chin, and Lily was still clutching her half-eaten cookie. Daniel felt energized. They had a solid lead now, proof that Maria had headed toward the factory that day. The radio played softly as they drove home, some upbeat pop song that had both kids bopping in their seats. When the chorus came around again, Lily started singing along, and to everyone's surprise, Tommy joined in, his sweet voice carrying the tune perfectly. Your mom teach you that song? Daniel asked, catching Tommy's eye in the rearview mirror. Tommy nodded, grinning. She sings it when she makes breakfast, says it's her happy song. Soon all 3 of them were singing, slightly off-key but not caring one bit. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and for the first time since finding the phone in the park, Daniel felt certain they would find Maria. The evidence was mounting, the trail getting warmer. Lily reached forward from the back seat and squeezed his shoulder. We're going to find Tommy's mom, aren't we, Daddy? Daniel met her eyes in the mirror, saw the same determination there that he felt in his heart. Yes, sweetheart, I think we are. The music played on, and their voices filled the car with hope as they drove through the familiar streets of their town, each mile bringing them closer to solving the mystery of Maria's disappearance. The clock on Daniel's nightstand blinked 11:47 p.m. when his phone buzzed. He'd been lying awake, mind racing with thoughts of Maria's journal and their progress at the cafe earlier. The unknown number made him hesitate, but something compelled him to answer. Hello? Daniel whispered, not wanting to wake Lily in the next room. The voice that responded was deep and distorted, like someone speaking through fabric. Drop it or your daughter pays the price. Daniel's blood ran cold. His fingers tightened around the phone as he sat bolt upright in bed. "Who is this? You think you're helping? Playing hero?" the voice continued, ignoring his question. "Stay away from the factory. Stay away from Maria Lopez. Or little Lily might not make it home from school one day." The line went dead. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs as he stumbled out of bed. The wooden floor felt ice cold under his bare feet as he rushed down the hallway to Lily's room. His hands trembled as he turned the doorknob, trying to be quiet despite his panic. Moonlight filtered through her butterfly curtains, casting a soft glow on her peaceful face. Lily lay curled up with her favorite stuffed elephant, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Her dark curls spilled across the pillow, so much like her mother's. Daniel's throat tightened. He crossed the room in 3 steps and gently touched her forehead, needing the reassurance of her warmth. Lily stirred slightly but didn't wake, mumbling something about cookies in her sleep. Daniel backed away slowly, careful not to disturb her rest. Out in the hallway, his protective instincts kicked in. He moved through the house like a man possessed, checking every window and door. In the kitchen, he tested the lock on the sliding glass door twice. The living room windows, all secured. The front door's deadbolt clicked heavily into place under his shaking hands. Each shadow in the house seemed to hide a threat. The tree branch, scraping against the garage window, made him jump. Even the familiar hum of the refrigerator felt ominous in the darkness. Daniel's mind raced with horrible possibilities. Someone had been watching them. Someone knew about Lily. The thought made him sick to his stomach. He'd been so focused on helping Tommy, on finding Maria, that he hadn't considered the danger he might be bringing to his own door. In the living room, he sank into his old armchair, the one Sarah had picked out years ago. The leather creaked under his weight as he buried his face in his hands. The house felt too quiet, too vulnerable, despite all the locked doors and windows. "Maybe I can't do this," he whispered into the darkness. The words tasted bitter, like defeat. His earlier confidence crumbled under the weight of this new threat. The faith that had driven him forward, the certainty that he was doing the right thing, it all seemed foolish now. His gaze fell on the family photo on the side table. Sarah's smile beamed back at him, frozen in time, holding a 3-year-old Lily. He remembered her strength, her unwavering belief in doing what was right, no matter how hard. But Sarah wasn't here now. It was just him, responsible for keeping their little girl safe. The warning echoed in his mind. "Drop it, or your daughter pays the price." 6 years of being both mother and father had taught Daniel that protecting Lily came before everything else. But abandoning Tommy and Maria to whatever dark fate awaited them, could he live with that choice? Daniel sat motionless in his chair as the minutes ticked by, torn between his instinct to protect and his conscience urging him forward. The darkness pressed in around him, heavy with uncertainty and fear. His hands still trembled slightly as he reached for his phone, wondering if he should call the police. But what could they do about an anonymous threat? The sound of Lily turning over in her bed upstairs made him tense. Every noise, every creak of the house settling, sent a fresh wave of anxiety through him. This was different from the abstract worry he'd felt when Sarah died. This was immediate, targeted danger, and he'd brought it right to their doorstep. "Maybe I can't do this," he repeated softly, his voice breaking. The courage that had filled him earlier that day at the cafe felt distant now, replaced by a cold, creeping fear that wrapped around his heart like ivy. His faith, usually a steady anchor, wavered in the face of this tangible threat to everything he held dear. Daniel sat at his kitchen table, staring into his untouched coffee. Dark circles hung under his eyes from a sleepless night filled with worry. The morning sun streamed through the windows, but it brought him no comfort. The anonymous threat from last night echoed in his mind. "Drop it, or your daughter pays the price." He'd already called Lily's school, making sure they knew not to let anyone but him pick her up. His daughter sat in the living room watching cartoons, blissfully unaware of the danger that now surrounded them. The doorbell rang, making Daniel jump. Through the window he saw Tommy's neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, standing there with Tommy holding her hand. The boy's face lit up when he spotted Daniel through the glass. Daniel's heart clenched. He couldn't open the door, he couldn't risk putting Tommy in danger too, but as he stood there, frozen, Tommy's small hand waved at him eagerly. "Mrs. Rodriguez rang the bell again. "Daniel, are you home?" He pressed his forehead against the cool window pane, willing them to leave. After a minute, Mrs. Rodriguez's shoulders slumped. She turned to go, but Tommy wouldn't budge. "But he promised," Tommy's voice carried through the door. "He said he'd help find Mommy." Daniel's hands balled into fists at his sides. The boy's words cut through him like a knife. "Maybe he's busy, Maijo," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. "We can come back later." Tommy pulled away from her and pressed his face against the door's window. "Mr. Daniel, please, are you there?" Lily appeared in the hallway, drawn by the commotion. "Daddy? Why is Tommy outside? Can't he come in?" Daniel closed his eyes, feeling trapped between his fear and his conscience. "Honey, it's complicated. But he's our friend," Lily said, her brow furrowed in confusion. "And he looks sad." Through the window, Daniel watched as Tommy's small shoulders began to shake. The boy slid down to sit on the front step, wrapping his arms around his knees. "Are you leaving me too?" Tommy's whispered words were barely audible through the door, but they might as well have been a shout for how they pierced Daniel's heart. Mrs. Rodriguez knelt beside Tommy, trying to comfort him, but the boy just buried his face in his arms and started to cry. Daniel felt rooted to the spot, his chest tight with conflicting emotions. The threat against Lily terrified him to his core, but watching Tommy break down was unbearable. The boy had already lost his mother, temporarily, Daniel prayed, and now he was watching another adult abandon him. "Daddy?" Lily tugged at his sleeve. "You look scared. Like when Mommy got sick." Daniel swallowed hard, looking down at his daughter's concerned face. She was so perceptive, just like her mother had been. "I am scared, sweetheart," he admitted quietly. Sometimes being a grown-up means making hard choices to keep people safe." Lily's face scrunched up thoughtfully. "Is that why you won't let Tommy in? To keep us safe?" Daniel nodded, his throat tight. "But Daddy," Lily said, her voice small but clear, "Mom would have helped. You always told me she was brave." The simple truth in his daughter's words hit Daniel like a physical force. Images of his late wife flooded his mind, her gentle smile, her fierce determination to help others even when she was sick, her unwavering faith that doing the right thing mattered more than being afraid. He remembered her last days in the hospital, how she'd made him promise to raise Lily to be brave and kind, to show her that love was stronger than fear. Now here was his daughter, reflecting that very wisdom back to him. Tommy's quiet sobs still filtered through the door. Mrs. Rodriguez was trying to convince him to leave, but the boy remained stubbornly seated on the step, his small body shaking with each breath. Lily wrapped her arms around Daniel's waist, hugging him tight. "Mom would have helped," she repeated softly. "And you're brave too, Daddy. You just forgot for a minute." Something shifted inside Daniel's chest, a warmth that began to push back against the cold grip of fear. His wife's voice seemed to whisper in his memory. "Perfect love casts out fear." It was one of her favorite Bible verses, one she'd quoted often during her illness. He looked down at Lily, still hugging him fiercely, then back at Tommy's hunched form on the step. The boy who'd lost his mother, who trusted Daniel enough to believe he was his father, who just needed someone to be brave enough to keep searching for the truth. Daniel felt tears prick at his eyes as Lily's words sank deeper into his heart. His wife would have helped, without hesitation. She would have found a way to be both brave and wise, to protect their daughter while still doing what was right. His hands stopped shaking. The fear was still there, but it no longer paralyzed him. Instead, it existed alongside something stronger, the courage that comes from choosing love over fear, from remembering who you really are when fear tries to make you forget. Like his wife always said, being brave didn't mean not being afraid. It meant doing what was right, even when you were scared. And right now, what was right was sitting on his front step, crying because he thought he'd lost another person he trusted. The warmth in Daniel's chest grew stronger, and he felt something inside him begin to stir, something that felt like hope, like faith, like the quiet strength his wife had always seen in him. even when he couldn't see it himself. The setting sun cast long shadows across Daniel's living room as he tucked Lily into bed. Her small hands gripped her favorite stuffed bear, the last birthday gift from her mother. The day's weight pressed heavy on his shoulders, Tommy's hurt face still fresh in his mind. "Daddy, can we say an extra prayer tonight?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. "Of course, sweetheart." Daniel perched on the edge of her bed, smoothing her covers. They usually prayed together, but tonight felt different, more urgent. After their shared prayer, Lily drifted off quickly, exhausted from the emotional day. Daniel stayed a moment longer, watching her peaceful breathing, before quietly closing her door. In his darkened living room, Daniel sank to his knees beside the couch. The house felt too quiet, too empty. His hands clasped together, trembling slightly. "I don't know what to do," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm scared for Lily. I'm scared for Tommy. But walking away, that feels wrong too." Tears slipped down his cheeks. "Please, give me strength. Show me the right path." As he knelt there, Maria's journal caught his eye on the coffee table. Something tugged at his memory. Officer Karen Johnson's business card tucked inside its pages. She'd been different from the others, showing genuine concern for Maria's case. Daniel reached for his phone, checking the time. 9:47 p.m. Late, but maybe not too late. His fingers hovered over the numbers on Officer Johnson's card before he finally pressed dial. It rang 3 times before her voice came through. "Officer Johnson speaking. This is Daniel Miller," he said, throat tight. "I'm sorry to call so late, but I need help." A pause then. "The phone case? Maria Lopez?" "Yes. Things have gotten complicated." Daniel's voice steadied as he explained everything. Tommy's situation, the threats, the journal entries they'd found. "I'm off duty, but I can meet you at the diner on Oak Street in 20 minutes, Officer Johnson said. "Bring the journal." Daniel called his elderly neighbor Mrs. Peterson to sit with Lily, grabbed the journal, and drove through the quiet streets. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he slid into a booth, ordering coffee while he waited. Officer Johnson arrived in civilian clothes, her badge clipped to her belt. She ordered coffee too, then opened Maria's journal with careful hands. "Show me what you found," she said, pulling out a notepad. Together, they pored over Maria's entries. The officer's pen scratched across paper as they pieced together a timeline. Maria's growing fear, the harassment at work, names of coworkers who'd witnessed things. "Look at this," Daniel pointed to an entry from 3 weeks ago. She wrote about filing a formal complaint with HR, but nothing happened. The next day, her supervisor started following her to her car. Officer Johnson leaned forward, frowning. "And here." She mentioned security cameras in the parking lot. Those tapes would still exist. "Could that help find her? If we can prove harassment and threats, I can push for a formal investigation." She closed the journal carefully. "This isn't just a missing persons case anymore. This is potential criminal conspiracy." Daniel's coffee had gone cold, untouched. "What about the threat against Lily?" "That's witness intimidation, another crime." Officer Johnson's eyes softened. "I understand your fear, Mr. Miller. But running away won't protect anyone. Maria's son needs you. And somewhere out there, Maria needs help too." "I keep thinking about my wife," Daniel admitted quietly. "When she got sick, we fought so hard. Every treatment, every option. Even when it seemed hopeless, we never gave up." He touched the journal's worn cover. "How can I give up on Maria when she's fighting too?" Officer Johnson nodded. "I'll reopen the case first thing tomorrow. We'll start with the security footage and interview her coworkers again. Fresh eyes, fresh urgency." "Thank you," Daniel said, meaning it deeply. Back home, he found Lily still sleeping peacefully. Mrs. Peterson reported no disturbances. After she left, Daniel sat on his daughter's bed, watching her chest rise and fall. "We'll find her, kids," he whispered, including Tommy in his thoughts. "I promise." The promise settled in his heart, stronger than his fear. He couldn't bring back Lily's mother, but he could help make sure Tommy didn't lose his. Sometimes faith meant taking action, even when scared. Sometimes courage meant standing up, even when threatened. Daniel touched Lily's hand gently. careful not to wake her. His daughter's earlier words echoed in his mind. Mom would have helped. She was right. His wife had always believed in doing what was right, no matter how hard. The glimmer of faith that had sparked during his prayer grew stronger. He wasn't alone in this anymore. Officer Johnson would help, and somewhere, he believed, his wife's spirit was watching over them all, Maria, Tommy, Lily, and himself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, faith had overcome fear. Daniel settled into the chair beside Lily's bed, keeping watch, his resolve renewed. They would find Maria. They would make things right. And maybe, just maybe, healing would come for everyone involved. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when Daniel's phone buzzed on his nightstand. Officer Karen Johnson's voice crackled through the speaker, urgent but controlled. Daniel, we've got something. Security footage from a gas station shows Maria being forced into a car that belongs to the factory manager. The car was later seen entering the storage facility behind the main building. Daniel sat up straight, his heart pounding. You think she's there? It's our best lead. We're organizing a search team right now. Officer Johnson paused. I know you want to help, Daniel. If you can get the kids somewhere safe, you can ride with me. You know Maria's voice. She might respond to a familiar face if she's... She didn't finish the sentence. I'll call the neighbor right away, Daniel said, already throwing on a clean shirt. His hands trembled as he buttoned it, but his movements were purposeful. Within 20 minutes, he had Lily dressed and fed. She sensed the importance of the morning, staying quiet and helpful as they drove to Tommy's apartment. The neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, opened her door before they even knocked, having been briefed by Officer Johnson. The police found something about my mommy? Tommy asked, his dark eyes wide with hope as Daniel knelt to his level. Yes, buddy. And I'm going to help them look for her. Daniel squeezed the boy's shoulder. Can you be brave and stay with Mrs. Rodriguez and Lily? I promise I'll come back with news as soon as I can. Tommy nodded solemnly, reaching for Lily's hand. The two children had grown close over the past few days, finding comfort in their shared worry. Daddy, Lily said, her voice small but determined, tell Maria that Tommy needs his mommy, just like I needed you when. She trailed off, but Daniel understood. The loss of her own mother had given his daughter wisdom beyond her years. Mrs. Rodriguez gathered both children close. We'll say prayers and make cookies while we wait, she assured Daniel. Go, find her. The police station parking lot was alive with activity when Daniel arrived. Officer Johnson stood beside her patrol car, conferring with other officers. She spotted Daniel and waved him over. We've got 4 units ready to go, she explained, spreading a map across her car hood. The storage facility is here, behind the main factory building. It's technically closed today, but we've spotted movement inside. The manager's car is parked round back. Daniel studied the map, his contractor's eye noting the building's layout. Those side doors? They're emergency exits? Yes, we'll have teams covering each exit while the main group goes in through the front. She looked at Daniel directly. I need you to stay close to me, understand? No heroics. Maria needs you alive and free to help Tommy. Daniel nodded, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. As they climbed into Officer Johnson's patrol car, she handed him a bulletproof vest. Protocol, she said simply. The convoy of police vehicles moved through the morning traffic with silent urgency. Daniel watched the familiar streets pass by, remembering how just days ago he'd been a regular dad taking his daughter to the park. Now he was part of a rescue mission, all because of a forgotten phone and a desperate message. Officer Johnson's radio crackled with updates from the other units. They were coordinating their approach, making sure all angles were covered. Daniel's hands clenched and unclenched in his lap. You know, Officer Johnson said quietly as they turned onto the Industrial Park Road. What you've done for Tommy, staying involved when others might have walked away, it matters. Maria's going to want to thank you herself. Daniel thought of Tommy's trust, Lily's compassion, and the way this search had awakened something in him he thought died with his wife. I just hope we're not too late. The factory loomed ahead, its windows dark and silent. The storage building squatted behind it like a gray concrete box. As they pulled into position, Daniel could see the other police units spreading out strategically around the perimeter. Officer Johnson parked in the shadow of the main building. She checked her weapon and radio one final time, then turned to Daniel. "Ready?" Daniel gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white but his gaze steady. The morning sun caught his wedding ring as he nodded, and for a moment he felt his late wife's presence, supporting him as he prepared to help another parent find their way home. Through the windshield, he watched the tactical team take their positions. The moment of action was approaching, and despite his fear, Daniel felt only determination. Somewhere in that building, a mother needed help. Somewhere inside, Maria was waiting to return to her son. The radio crackled with the final go-ahead signal. Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel as the convoy prepared to move into their final positions. His eyes locked on the storage building, determination burning in his gaze. They were going to find Maria. They had to. The factory loomed like a giant shadow against the pale morning sky. Daniel stood behind the police line, his heart pounding against his ribs as he watched the SWAT team gather at the storage building's entrance. The rusty metal structure sat apart from the main factory, surrounded by overgrown weeds and broken pallets. Officer Johnson touched his shoulder. "Stay here, Daniel. We'll handle this." Her bulletproof vest gleamed in the early light as she joined her fellow officers. Daniel nodded, though every fiber of his being wanted to rush in. The past few days had been a blur of fear, hope, and determination. Now, watching the officers move into position, time seemed to slow to a crawl. Each second felt like an hour. "Police! Open up!" The command echoed across the empty parking lot. Daniel's fingers curled into fists at his sides. He thought of Tommy waiting at home with the neighbor, of Lily's innocent faith that they would find Maria. The weight of their trust pressed heavily on his shoulders. The sound of splintering wood made him jump. The SWAT team had breached the door. Shouts and heavy footsteps followed. Daniel held his breath, scanning the entrance for any sign of movement. "Clear the first room. Moving to the back. Check that office." Each call from inside the building made Daniel's stomach tighten. He took a step forward, then caught himself. Officer Johnson's warning rang in his ears. "Stay put. Let them work." A new voice cut through the chaos. "We need medical here, now." Daniel's heart stopped. Medical. They'd found someone. But were they too late? Two paramedics rushed past him with a stretcher, their equipment rattling. The morning air felt thick and heavy in Daniel's lungs as he waited, praying silently. "Please, let her be alive. Please let her be okay." Movement at the doorway caught his attention. Officers emerged, surrounding someone. As they stepped into the light, Daniel saw her. Maria. She was alive. Her dark hair hung limply around her face, and her work uniform was wrinkled and dirty. She looked thinner than in her photos, her steps unsteady as officers supported her. But her eyes were alert and searching. Those eyes found Daniel. "Maria!" The name escaped his lips before he could stop himself. She reached for him, breaking away from the officers. Daniel rushed forward, meeting her halfway. She collapsed against him, her body trembling. "You found me," she whispered, her voice hoarse but filled with wonder. "You actually found me." Daniel supported her weight, feeling the fragility of her frame. "Tommy's safe," he assured her quickly. "He's been staying with your neighbor. He's okay." A sob shook through her at the mention of her son's name. "My baby? I was so afraid I'd never—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The paramedics approached with the stretcher. "Ma'am, we need to check you out." Maria's fingers tightened on Daniel's arm. "Don't leave," she pleaded. "Please." "I'm right here," he promised, helping her onto the stretcher. "I'm not going anywhere." The paramedics worked efficiently, checking her vital signs and starting an IV. Maria never let go of Daniel's hand, as if afraid he might disappear if she did. Her grip was weak but determined. Officer Johnson appeared beside them, her face gentle. "Miss Lopez, when you're feeling stronger, we'll need to take your statement. But right now, just focus on getting better." Maria nodded, then looked up at Daniel. "How did you find me?" I thought no one would." "Your phone," Daniel explained softly. "I found it in the park, that text you sent Tommy." He swallowed hard, remembering the fear he'd felt reading those words. I couldn't just walk away. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. God sent you, she whispered. He heard my prayers. The paramedics began moving the stretcher toward the waiting ambulance. Maria's hand remained firmly in Daniel's, their joined fingers a bridge of trust and gratitude. As they loaded her into the vehicle, she finally spoke about what happened. My manager, she said, her voice stronger now. When I threatened to expose everything, the discrimination, the unsafe conditions, she shuddered. He locked me in that storage room. Said no one would believe me anyway. Daniel's jaw tightened with anger, but he kept his voice gentle. They arrested him. He can't hurt you anymore. The morning sun had fully risen now, painting the sky in shades of hope. As the paramedics prepared to close the ambulance doors, Maria's grip on Daniel's hand remained steady. Her eyes, though tired, shone with relief and something else, a quiet strength that had helped her survive. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up, for believing me when no one else would. Daniel stood there, connected to this brave woman by their joined hands, knowing that somehow, in helping her, he'd also helped himself heal. The fear that had nearly stopped him from acting, the grief that had made him cautious, they hadn't won. Love and courage had proven stronger. The paramedic touched his shoulder. Sir, we need to transport her now. Maria's fingers tightened one last time around his. Will you tell Tommy I'm okay? That I never stop thinking about him? Of course, Daniel promised. We'll bring him to see you soon. He watched as they secured the doors, Maria's hand still extended toward his through the narrowing gap. The ambulance's red lights painted patterns across the factory walls, a reminder of how close they'd come to losing her. But they hadn't. She was alive, and she was free. As the ambulance pulled away, Daniel felt the weight of the past few days lift from his shoulders. The morning light seemed brighter somehow, full of promise. It wasn't just Maria who had been found. Something in Daniel had been recovered too. A piece of his heart he thought he'd lost with his wife, the courage to reach out, to fight for others, to believe in hope again. The hospital corridor buzzed with activity, but everything seemed to slow down when Tommy's small feet pattered against the linoleum floor. Mommy! His voice cracked with emotion as he broke free from the neighbor's gentle grip and ran toward Maria's room. Daniel and Lily followed close behind, watching as Tommy burst through the door. Maria sat propped up in her hospital bed, arms already opening wide despite the IV line attached to her wrist. Her face lit up with pure joy as Tommy launched himself into her embrace. Mi amor, my baby, Maria whispered, pulling Tommy close. Her voice was hoarse, but her eyes sparkled with tears as she pressed kisses into his hair. Tommy's small shoulders shook with sobs as he clutched her hospital gown. I missed you so much, Mommy. Tommy hiccuped between tears. I was so scared. I know, Missiello. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. Maria rocked him gently, her own tears falling freely. Lily stepped forward, her hand tucked in Daniel's. She looked up at her father, who nodded encouragingly. With careful steps, she approached the bed and placed her small hand on Tommy's back. We helped find your mommy, Lily said softly. Just like you wanted. Maria extended one arm, inviting Lily into the embrace. Without hesitation, Lily climbed onto the bed and joined the hug. The sight of the three of them together made Daniel's heart swell with emotion. Thank you, sweet girl, Maria said, holding both children close. You and your papa. You gave Tommy a family when I couldn't be there. The neighbor who had been caring for Tommy stood in the doorway, wiping her eyes with a tissue. Other neighbors began filtering in, bringing flowers, balloons, and handmade cards. The small hospital room quickly filled with warmth and chatter. Maria looked over the children's heads at Daniel, her dark eyes brimming with gratitude. Mr. Miller, Daniel. She struggled to find the right words. How can I ever repay you? You risked everything to find me. Daniel moved closer to the bed, shaking his head. Just be here for your boy, he said gently. That's all the thanks I need. More community members arrived, parents from Tommy's school, teachers, and even some of Maria's former co-workers who had helped expose the truth. They filled the room with promises of support and determination. "We're filing a class action lawsuit," announced one of Maria's colleagues. "What happened to you is going to bring change. The factory won't get away with this anymore." "And we're starting a support group," added another neighbor, "for single parents in our community. No one should ever feel alone like this again." Maria squeezed Tommy tighter, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love. "I never knew I had so many angels watching over us," she whispered. A nurse poked her head in, smiling but firm. "Maria needs rest now. You can all come back during regular visiting hours." As the room slowly emptied, Tommy refused to let go of his mother. "Can I stay, please?" The nurse looked at Maria's chart, then nodded. "Just for tonight." Lily gave Tommy and Maria one last hug before taking Daniel's hand. As they turned to leave, Maria called out softly, "Daniel, wait." He paused at the doorway, turning back. Tommy had already curled up beside his mother, his small hand clutching hers as if afraid she might disappear again. "Thank you," Maria said simply, "for believing in me, for protecting my son, for not giving up." Daniel met her gaze, seeing in her eyes the same strength and devotion he'd recognized in his late wife, the fierce love of a parent who would do anything for their child. A quiet understanding passed between them. "Get some rest," he said softly. "We'll come back tomorrow." Maria's smile was tired, but genuine, holding a warmth that spoke of new beginnings. Daniel returned the smile, feeling something settle in his heart, not an ending, but a continuation of something beautiful and unexpected. As they walked down the corridor, Lily skipping beside him, Daniel heard Tommy's happy chatter mixing with Maria's gentle laughter behind them. The sound followed them like a blessing, a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of faith lead to the most precious rewards. The late summer sunshine painted golden streaks across the park, where everything had started just weeks ago. Daniel watched as Lily and Tommy raced ahead, their sneakers kicking up wood chips as they darted toward the playground. The same bench where he'd found Maria's phone now held their picnic supplies, a red checkered blanket, a wicker basket filled with sandwiches, and 4 bottles of lemonade sweating in the afternoon heat. "It feels different being here now," Maria said softly, adjusting the light sweater around her shoulders. Though still recovering, color had returned to her cheeks and her eyes sparkled with life again. Daniel nodded, remembering the cold fear that had gripped him that day. Hard to believe it was just a few weeks ago. They walked together toward the playground, keeping a watchful eye on the children. Tommy's laughter, once so rare and whispered, now rang clear and strong across the park. He hung upside down from the monkey bars, his dark hair falling in his eyes as he called out, "Look, Mom! Look what I can do!" "I see you, mi amor," Maria called back, her voice warm with pride. "Be careful." Lily, ever the protective friend, stood nearby with her hands outstretched. "I'll catch you if you fall, Tommy." Daniel felt his heart swell at his daughter's words. She'd grown so much through all of this, showing a compassion that reminded him daily of her mother. The thought no longer brought sharp pain. Instead, it filled him with quiet gratitude. "Your daughter," Maria said, settling onto a bench near the playground, "she has such a beautiful heart." "Just like her mom," Daniel replied, sitting beside her. "Sarah would have loved seeing them together like this." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the children play. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of nearby flowering bushes. Tommy had moved to the slide now, with Lily following close behind. "You know," Maria said, her voice thoughtful, "when I sent that text message, I was so scared. I thought." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I thought Tommy would grow up never knowing how much I loved him." Daniel remembered the chill that had run through him when he'd first read those words on the abandoned phone. But instead, he got to see just how brave his mom island. Maria smiled, brushing away a tear. And he got to see how good people can be, how strangers can become. She glanced at Daniel, her eyes soft. Family. From the playground came shrieks of delight as Lily pushed Tommy on the swing. The little boy pumped his legs, going higher and higher, while Lily encouraged him. "You're doing it, Tommy! You're flying!" "I never properly thanked you," Maria said, turning to face Daniel. For believing in me when everyone else had given up. For protecting my son when I couldn't." Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. I just did what anyone should have done." "But they didn't," Maria insisted gently. "You did. You risked everything. Your safety, your peace of mind, even Lily's security, to help us." The mention of risk brought back memories of that threatening phone call, the fear that had almost made him give up. "There was a moment when I almost walked away," he admitted. "When they threatened Lily." "But you didn't," Maria finished for him. "You showed Tommy what real courage looks like." A shout from the playground drew their attention. "Dad, Maria, watch this," Lily called out. She and Tommy had organized themselves into a complicated game of follow the leader, weaving between the swing set posts and around the slide. "We see you, sweetheart," Daniel called back, then turned to Maria with a smile. "They're quite the team now." "Yes," Maria agreed, watching the children with shining eyes. "It's amazing how love can grow from something so frightening." The afternoon light began to soften, casting everything in warm amber tones. Tommy and Lily had moved to the grassy area, turning cartwheels and giggling when they fell. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Daniel said, watching the children play. "How that one moment, finding your phone, changed everything. If I'd been sitting on a different bench, if we'd gone to the park at a different time." Maria touched his arm gently. "But you were there. You were meant to be there." They sat in peaceful silence, watching their children chase each other across the grass. The park around them was alive with the sounds of late summer, birds calling, leaves rustling, and the pure, unfettered sound of children's laughter. Tommy ran up to them, slightly out of breath, his dark eyes bright with joy. "Can we have the sandwiches now? We're starving." "Totally starving," Lily echoed, appearing beside him. Daniel chuckled, standing up. "Well, we can't have that, can we?" He walked over to the picnic bench and began unpacking the basket while Maria spread out the checkered blanket on a patch of soft grass. The four of them settled onto the blanket, passing around sandwiches and pouring lemonade into plastic cups. Tommy leaned against his mother's side, taking big bites of his peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Lily sat cross-legged, carefully picking the crusts off her bread just like she always did. As Daniel watched them all, this unexpected family brought together by fate and courage, he thought about that terrible text message that had started everything. Words meant to be a final goodbye had instead become the beginning of something beautiful. "Dad," Lily said, breaking into his thoughts, "can we come back tomorrow? Tommy wants to learn how to pump on the swings by himself." Before Daniel could answer, Tommy jumped up. "Race you to the swings!" he called out, already running. "No fair. You got a head start." Lily scrambled to her feet, chasing after him. The sound of their laughter floated back across the park as they ran, two small figures silhouetted against the golden afternoon light. Daniel and Maria sat side by side on the blanket, watching their children play, peace settling over them like a warm embrace. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Daniel Miller, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.